Hello, Sharks. My name's Mike Vincent, and I'm the EVP at FreightWaves. This is Ben. I met him out in the hallway. He had a computer, looked like he could run it, so we'll see how this rolls. We have this distinct pleasure of introducing to you the very first freight market dashboard. Let me be very clear, this is not a pricing tool. We feel that there is a tremendous amount of excellent pricing tools out there on the market. Sonar gathers a unique data set never before seen in the market, aggregating millions of data points from 80+ different sources that give you insights and give you the ability to make sound decisions on how your company operates, whether you're a shipper, a carrier, or an intermediary. I'm going to walk you through Sonar and show you just how simple it is to use for the busy CEO who needs a 30-second overview of what's going on in the market, down to the analytics person who needs to get into the hows and whys. Sonar is a SaaS-based analytics platform with 4 key features that are all user-defined: mapping, charting, news feeds, and watch lists. They're all customizable and can be saved on unique dashboards for later recall. So let's look at the CEO level here. On this screen here, on these charts, on the left-hand side, you see a heat map of OTR. OTR is outbound tender rejects and indicates as a percentage the number of loads in a market that are being rejected versus the number of loads that are being offered in that market. And it's indicative and predictive of price movement. It would show upward pressure in spot markets. You can see by this map that up the center of the country is very high pressure on spot markets, and to a lesser, and other parts of the country, the downward pressure on spot markets. So for the data analytics guy, you can bring up a widget on the right-hand side and chart these and find out what's going on. Now, we charted up and down the middle of the country and a couple other key markets to see what was going on, and we found that right around Cinco de Mayo is when this event took place. However, Cinco de Mayo wasn't a very good answer, so we dug in a little bit further and found that this was directly correlated to agriculture moves. And you can now see that in the Chicago market, in the Dallas market, in the Eastern Pennsylvania market, there's downward pressure on the pricing and upward pricing in the middle of the country. So let's move on and look a little bit at ELDs. There was a lot of questions on what would happen with ELDs, and there was a lot of questions on what has occurred with ELDs. We'll go to the OTRI Chicago as he's bringing this up. So let me be clear, we're using Chicago because we felt it was very representative of the audience. However, we do cover over 135 different markets throughout the United States and many more indices and data analytics that I'm going to show you here today. So stop by the booth if you haven't seen it. It's the small one out there, and we'll be happy to give you demo or private demos. But what you can see here is Thanksgiving, the outbound tender reject was up in the 30s, 36+%. It starts to come down in early December and kind of normalize, hits a low at around 25, which it doesn't see again until late March. But here you can see the spike in December, Ben over here to the left, where the ELD mandate took place. And then you kind of see this market fluctuation as the markets, the drivers, the shippers trying to figure out what's going on. And somewhere around late February into March, you start to see a change in market dynamics, which you probably saw in your spot market rates. Now let me be clear, tender rejects and contract rates are different. This indicates what we think is that the contracted rates were going into effect at this time and putting downward pressure on the pricing in the spot market because of the lowering of tender rejects, which shows a couple things: that it was a deflationary environment in the spot market, but it also shows that the new contracts were being put in place and the shippers were becoming much more comfortable with their ability to source capacity through their contract rates. We'll dig into another index here, the low sulfur diesel consumption, which is on the left-hand side. And the low sulfur diesel index will show you the gallons being consumed or the consumption of diesel in a specific market, which is indicative of how many Class 8 units there are in that market. We bring up next to it the outbound tender reject in the same market, Los Angeles, to point out, you can see the peaks and valleys are exactly opposite of each other, and they lag a little bit. So you see consumption of fuel, capacity in the market, and then a lag as that capacity exits that market. So you can see capacity move through these two indexes being layered next to each other or over each other on the same chart if you were to do that. Let's move on to hours of service, HOS. And what you're seeing here on this screen here is we're laying out hours of service 11, which is on the on-duty driving, and hours of service 14 that we're collecting through the ELDs, which is the off-duty and on-duty other. And what this is indicating that a couple of things. The ELDs are much more accurate than the paper logs. Obviously, they're measuring by the minute and not by the 15-minute time frame. And that also drivers are becoming much more efficient at managing their drive times through a couple of different techniques. So other indices that we do cover, diesel pricing, commodity flows, the hours of service, geolocation of hours of service, remaining hours of service, on average, average drive times in markets, so on and so forth. Be happy to go through all of those with you, live demos out at our booth or in private demos if you wish. So thank you very much, Sharks, and I hope we strike a deal.